Glasshoppa, which is at your feet.
Hello, Jim Matthews from Glasshoppa.com. You know what I like most about this piece? It's the stand. Simple, unobtrusive, and it's glass. Maybe the fact that it's glass even contributes to the appeal of the glass on display. The process of developing these taught me this. A stand is good if it does its job and neither detracts from or competes with the piece on display. And if it can add to the aesthetics of the piece without competing with it, that's your home run. I'll show you how these were made. I started with a base piece that's about the width of the piece I want to display and about 3 inches deep. Then I went to work savaging the edges with my nippers, just breaking up the straight line of the edge to prevent this. See how the straight edge of the base distracts from the natural look of the cracked glass pile? And I'll use my usual generic aloe vera gel to give the glass chunks something to stick to. And then, these are remnants of clear glass that I pounded lightly and then screened to remove the fines. I'm going to get rid of anything that looks like it doesn't belong. And I want to make a pile deep enough so that when divided it creates a slot deep enough to hold the piece, and the whole thing needs to be heavy enough to keep it from tipping over. You see why I'm assembling on the kiln shelf instead of trying to move it there later. Now the ever useful liquid white rain, which is just cheap hairspray. Anything similar should do the trick. Let's set this aside for the time being and go to work on the stair-step version. I decided to use double thick clear for the bottom step here. That's not necessary, it's just a way of making my stand a little higher with one less stair step. We'll rough up the edges like before. Actually, a stair-step design could look good with straight lines too, couldn't it? Might even be more versatile. Each step needs to be a little smaller than the one below it. It'll get smaller still when I savage the edges. Nippers are getting a workout today, aren't they? You can see I broke a corner off there. That won't matter. I'm really only concerned with how the front of this looks. And I went ahead and made the top step while you weren't looking. So there's what will go into the kiln, along with the cracked glass stack we just made, and a little stair-step design I made using earth tone opaques. And here's the shelf post-firing. These were fired to 1365 Fahrenheit and held for 2 minutes, annealed for 90 minutes, and cooled extra slowly. The long annealing is due to the thickness of the pieces, and the extra slow cooling because of the dimensional nature of the designs. The exact schedules will be on the project PDF. Next, I split them lengthwise. This one I split more or less down the center. This one I tried leaving the back side wider to help support the piece on display. The next step is to cut a base piece to fit these. Then we'll cold fuse these halves to that, leaving a gap the size we need to support our display. This clamping is temporary to hold the front in place while I position and mark the placement of the back. Now, these lines mark the thickness of my piece, but the actual gap needs to be a little bit wider than that, doesn't it? So the piece can tilt back slightly, but not much wider. It takes surprisingly little and it's easy to overdo it. That's the additional width I'll add. Call it a 1/16 of an inch, 1.5 to 2 millimeters. Now I'm going to use a different adhesive here, Loctite Go-To Glue. I have tested it glass to glass. It dries beautifully clear and seems really strong. Clean your pieces well. We don't have the heat of the kiln to burn away dust and hairs that get trapped between layers. I'm going to use this cheap foam painter's tool to apply the glue because I want to spread it very thin and all the way out to the edges. Thin so it doesn't seep out the edges. Now, I don't know this glue that well, so I can't attest that it won't crack and yellow over time. But it says it won't. Now you have some working time with this, about 5 minutes the instructions say, so you can perfect the positioning after mating the pieces. I'll let these cure for 24 hours. Now let's take a look at the more utilitarian approach. Now these guys will work for a wide variety of designs. They'll never get in the way or compete for attention, and I think they look pretty good, better than most anything you'll buy in a craft store. The long base provides enough support that we no longer have to concern ourselves with the weight of the stand. I cut a length of regular 3mm clear, 1 3/4 inches wide, then sliced off 1 4-inch piece for the base and 6 3/4 inch pieces to form the slot. Adhesive is a good idea for assembly. Otherwise, the pieces slide around too easily. Trust me, I tried it. Pin pricks of Elmer's, we used to say at Spectrum when teaching children. They'd still slather it on like grape jelly. I'm going to mark the thickness again here. Okay, these are ready for the kiln. Careful not to overfire them like I did here. Too much heat and deformation begins. See how the slot has collapsed out of shape? This one's useless. Our stair-step stand is dry. It looks pretty nice. The Sharpie marks have got to go. If your slot is too wide for whatever you want to display, just put a little spacer of some sort behind it. If your slot is too narrow, close your eyes, pinch the bridge of your nose and say, crap. I did clean the Sharpie marks with a cotton swab and some denatured alcohol. And look, the moisture reacted with the adhesive and created this milky muck. But once it dried, it demuckified and became nice and clear again, so no cause for alarm. Now you might be asking, if we can use a good adhesive for part of this process, couldn't we use it for all of it? Yep, we can. The stand on the left here was glued, the other fused. And the stand in the foreground, glued. Here's my plug for the Go-To glue from Loctite. After having been through this and made a number of these in various ways, Here's what I think I would do in the future. I would choose to fuse these instead of glue them, and I'd experiment with using fiber paper in the slot during firing. That would allow me to fire a little hotter to further soften the edges of the glass without worrying about slot deformation. So when life circumstances call on you to make a stand, I hope you'll try some of these. Thank you.